Good morning and welcome. I'm Bruce Marshall, UUFH minister from 1981 to 1992. It's good to be back with you, albeit virtually. Today we gather during Women's History Month to celebrate the women who have made this fellowship what it is. History gives us stories that tell us who we have been. From sharing these stories, we're reminded of who we are as we also seek possibilities for the future. In this service, we will note particular women who have been important in the life of the fellowship. But we also want to acknowledge the energy brought to this congregation by many women, some active for years, for decades, others for shorter periods, all expressing a spirit that we hope to evoke this morning. And so, as we come together, may we listen, may we open ourselves to these stories, may we honor those who have gone before, as we also consider how our own stories might intersect with theirs. May we feel how the spirit of the past still lives and reflect upon where it may take us in the days and the years to come.
Good morning. I'm Lisa Burby. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Huntington's hybrid multi-platform Sunday service. Today we're streaming live from multiple locations here in our sanctuary in Huntington, as well as in Maryland and Massachusetts. So please be patient with any technical delays or glitches we may experience. And for those of you joining us on Zoom, please feel free to use the chat to say hello. We are also streaming live on Facebook, so a big hello to all of those who are joining us there. We would also like to extend a special welcome to visitors joining us for the first time here or virtually, as well as any newcomers who are returning. If you would like to learn more about us, feel free to speak with someone after the service if you are here, and let us know in the chat, or email us at office@uufh.org. Know that whoever you are, whomever you love, and wherever you are on life's journey, you are welcome here. We do have a few announcements, of course. There will be a virtual joint UUFH Shelter Rock Seder service on Saturday, April 16th at 5 p.m. Details are on our site and will be in this week's newsletter, our flash. In the surest sign that life is potentially returning to normal, coffee hour will be back next week on April 3rd. And so another sign of normalcy is we need volunteers. So if you want to sign up to make coffee or clean up, you can do so in the kitchen. Is that beeping something I need to worry about? No? Okay, sorry. Also, 2 fundraisers are back. The Auction Gala 2022 is April 30th, both in person and online, and it's time to enter what you want to offer. All you need to know is on our website. There's a button on the home page, and if you're not familiar with the auction, if there's anyone here on the committee, raise your hands. Please see Sue McGovern after the service if you're not familiar with our annual auction. It's a fun event. Another fundraiser is our annual plant sale. Information about that is also on our site, and I believe in the social hall today. Because I know you're eager to get to the service with our much-loved speakers today, I'll just advise you to look in our weekly e-newsletter, The Flash, for many other announcements, and our website, uufh.org. If you don't get the newsletter, it's easy to sign up through the link on the homepage. We're a busy congregation, so you won't want to miss what we're doing. And now I am honored to welcome back this morning our 2 much-beloved ministers, Reverend Bruce Marshall and Reverend Beth Graham. Bruce was UUFH minister from 1981 to 1992. In addition, he served Unitarian Universalist congregations in Michigan, Ohio, Tennessee, and Maryland. Bruce is also a writer with 5 books published, including A Holy Curiosity, Stories of a Liberal Religious Faith, and in the later years, Finding Meaning and Spirit in Aging. Bruce is married to Amy Dibner, an architect. They live in Silver Spring, Maryland. Beth followed Bruce's tenure here as a UFH minister, serving the congregation from 1994 to 2003. Since her departure from Huntington, she has focused her energy on raising money for the Unitarian Universalist Association in Boston for 8 years, and then for a children's and family services nonprofit organization in her community for 10 years. She and her husband, Bill Schultz, are both now happily retired and live in the seacoast town of Gloucester, Massachusetts. Welcome back to both of you. And now I invite you to settle into your bodies, quiet your minds as we breathe deeply together, and settle into our time of worship. Please join me in saying our mission statement. The words will be on the screen. In religious community, we nurture our individual spirits through caring for one another and helping to heal the world. Please join me here and at home in singing our affirmation, Common Ground. The words will be on the screen.
And now, as Danielle Burby brings a flame to the chalice, the flaming chalice being the symbol of our religious faith, we hear these words by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. In a house which becomes a home, one hands down and another takes up the heritage of mind and heart, laughter and tears, musings and deeds. We live not by things, but by the meanings of things. It is needful to transmit the passwords from generation to generation. And Danielle's joined by members of the RE program. And now we'll hear a story for all ages.
Selections from She Persisted, written by Chelsea Clinton, illustrated by Alexandra Boyger. Sometimes being a girl isn't easy. At some point, someone probably will tell you no, will tell you to be quiet, and may even tell you your dreams are impossible. Don't listen to them. These American women certainly did not take no for an answer. They persisted. After her family fled poverty and the threat of violence in Ukraine for a new home in New York City, Clara Lemlich got a job working at a garment factory. She wrote that the factory's conditions made women into machines, and so she persisted, organizing picket lines and strikes that ultimately helped win better pay, shorter hours, and safer working conditions for thousands of workers, both women and men. She once said, "I am one of those who suffers from the abuses described here, and I move that we go on general strike." After Maria Tallchief's family moved to California, partly to support Maria's dream of becoming a dancer, she was teased by students in school for her Native American heritage, and later was encouraged to change her last name to something that sounded Russian, since many professional dancers at that time were from Russia. She persisted, ignoring all the taunting and poor advice, to become the first great American prima ballerina. She once said, "It never occurred to me to say, It hurts to do that. As a 15-year-old riding a bus home from school in Montgomery, Alabama, Claudette Colvin was expected to give up her seat to a white woman just because she was African American. In her refusal to get up, she persisted in taking a stand for what's right, helping to inspire Rosa Parks to make the same choice 9 months later, an act many point to as starting the modern civil rights movement. She once said, "I knew then and I know now that when it comes to justice, there is no easy way to get it. You can't sugarcoat it. You have to take a stand and say, this is not right." Sally Ride always believed women could succeed in any math or science career. Although not everyone agreed, she persisted, and she became the first American woman in space. But that wasn't enough for Sally. She traveled into space once more and then created science and engineering programs, specifically for girls so she could help generations of young women achieve their dreams too, both on Earth and in outer space. She once said, "Young girls need to see role models in whatever careers they may choose, just so they can picture themselves doing those jobs someday. You can't be what you can't see." Watching fictional judges on television inspired Sonia Sotomayor to want to be a real-life judge when she grew up. She knew she'd have to speak English as well as she spoke Spanish, study hard in school, and manage her diabetes before she could one day wear a judge's robe with a gavel in hand. She persisted, eventually becoming a Supreme Court justice and the first ever Latina to sit on America's highest court. She once said, "I have never had to face anything that could overwhelm the native optimism and stubborn perseverance I was blessed with." So, if anyone ever tells you no, if anyone ever says your voice isn't important or your dreams are too big, remember these women and more. They persisted, and so should you. The end.
Please join me now in singing our children to their classrooms.
Greetings from Silver Spring, Maryland, just across the border from Washington, D.C., where my wife Amy and I have lived for almost 15 years. Until her recent retirement, Amy was an architect for the firm in Washington, while I served UU congregations in Maryland. Amy and I have a blended family of 4 children and 3 grandchildren, the most recent making his appearance this past Tuesday evening when Jasper was born. Some of you will remember my daughter, Katie, who was a toddler when my ministry in Huntington concluded. Katie is now an attorney with a firm in Minneapolis, where her focus is on energy law. She is married to Maurice. They live in St. Paul, Minnesota. I appreciate this opportunity to remember and reflect about my time with the Huntington UU Fellowship. The first people I met from this congregation were members of the search committee tasked with identifying a ministerial candidate to present to the congregation. Among those on the committee were Ruth Lyon, the chair. Also, Mary Jane Walkinger, Jean Barron, Sally Lineweaver, all strong, smart women who were deeply committed to the fellowship. Meeting them gave me a clue that I might like to serve this congregation. As a minister seeking a settlement, you look for commitment, a passion for the congregation and its people and its mission. That commitment was quite evident among the women representing the fellowship on that search committee. There was energy, and I wanted to be where that energy was. When I came to Huntington after being chosen the candidate, I met Lois Ann Cepez, who was then fellowship president, another strong, capable, committed woman in fellowship leadership. Lois Ann told me a little of her story. In the early 1960s, she had read a book, The Feminine Mystique by Betty Friedan. That book, Lois Ann said, identified a yearning in her. She was not going to be content with the life offered to women in that era. She was not going to be content as a suburban housewife. At that time, though, many doors were closed to women who sought a consequential life outside of the home. She became an elementary school teacher, but that too was not enough, which is where the fellowship came in. Lois Ann did not have a UU background, and I don't remember how she discovered this congregation. But once she and Peter became involved, she found an answer to that yearning. The fellowship did not present the same barriers to women becoming involved in leadership that were found elsewhere. Here there was a supportive environment in which she could explore who she could be. This fellowship, she said, is filled with women like me. Women with more talent and ambition than was welcome in other places, who then brought their energy into this congregation. That, she said, is a secret to the success of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Huntington. Religious organizations, fellowships, churches, synagogues have always depended upon women to keep the places going. Nothing new about that. But these congregations have tended to follow a top-down authority structure. That is, decisions were made at the top, almost always by men, and then you were expected to run around implementing those decisions. What was different here was that the feminist awakening of that era became part of the prevailing culture. A key aspect of which was that leadership was to be shared, not reserved for the few. Let me give you an example, decision-making. The way we made decisions was different at the UUFH. We even had a name for it. We called it the process. I don't know if you use that terminology anymore, but the process was a familiar concept when I was there. What it meant was that everybody with a stake in an outcome could be heard, formally, informally, at meetings, in conversations, discussion groups, parties. There were many opportunities to participate. I have to say that the process sometimes could take quite a while to get to a conclusion. I was at the fellowship when your building was being re-envisioned and renovated, and I do believe we debated every inch of the structure. I sometimes want to just make any old decision so we could finish and move on. But actually, this process worked pretty well. Voices were heard, people invested themselves, and the decisions often ended up being better than what had been originally anticipated. The process also offered opportunities to reflect upon the values that gathered the congregation. What did this decision and how we were making it say about who we were and who we aspired to be? I once wrote up an example of the process for a minister's publication. The issue I selected was the placement of the desk in my office. As part of the castle renovation, the minister got a new office. Where would the desk go? Well, I followed norms of the process and listened to everybody who had an opinion. And everybody, it seemed, had an opinion about where the desk should be placed in the minister's office. I endured a fair amount of ribbing for that article. People, mostly white male ministers, said, You have the right to decide where your desk goes. Case closed, harumph, harumph. Which, of course, was true. I could have said, put that desk there, and that would have been it. But that misses the point. The issue was not interior decorating. It was about values, the values of this congregation. We express our values and how we approach everyday things. The placement of the desk was a visual expression of the role of the minister in this congregation. What ultimately resulted was a desk placement off to the side of the office so the minister could talk directly to people without having a desk placed in between. And so the minister could see into the hallway and be seen from the hallway, which is where much of the work of a congregation actually takes place. Let me offer another example. For a sabbatical project, I decided to write a book about religious liberalism and how we approach basic religious questions. I came back from that sabbatical with a manuscript, but I didn't know what to do next. I offered it to be compressed. They didn't want it. Skinner House wasn't yet the publisher it has become, and so that manuscript just sat there. Enter several women at the fellowship. Publish a book? Sure, we can do that. Pretty soon we had an editor, an artist to design the cover, a printer. Money was raised to support the project. We had a plan for publicity. And then there it was, A Holy Curiosity, Stories of a Liberal Religious Faith, with the UU Fellowship of Huntington as publisher. It did well, too. I've written other books that have made it into print, each by publishers following a more traditional process, but none did as well as A Holy Curiosity. 30 years later, it's long out of print and certainly dated, but that book is still around, still being used. It would not have happened without the women of the fellowship, which I venture to say is true of much of what has made this fellowship so special. It wouldn't have happened without the women of this congregation. Congregations have personalities that exist above and beyond the specific individuals who are active at any time. Individuals come and go. The congregational personality continues. I've always loved the personality of this congregation. It's open, welcoming, creative, encouraging, supportive, not afraid to express appreciation, not afraid to show emotion, and often just plain fun. All of which I associate with feminist awakening that found a home here at the UUFH. I feel fortunate to have been part of this congregation, have many fond memories. It was a time when we made a difference in many lives, which I am confident will persist as the story of the Huntington UU Fellowship continues to unfold.
Thank you, Bruce. I invite us all to sing Spirit of Life. Following the song, we will enter into a time of silence, followed by a brief prayer. As you participate here in the sanctuary and at home, it's not about the perfection of silence, but the intention. Please join me now in singing Spirit of Life. From A Prayer for Rising to the Occasion by Laura Horton Ludwig. This week brought many assaults on values we hold dear. May this time be of quiet be an opportunity to touch peace within ourselves, to tap new springs of courage, resolve, and hope. We know that none of us alone can hold all that must be held or do all that must be done, but may each of us be led toward that work it is ours to do. And as a community, may we feel our strength together and use it for the good as best we can. In this spirit, we name our concern for this land and for its people and for the people of the world. May all who are moved to action in these times be clear and strong and compassionate in our response. For those worried about how they will pay for the costs of medical care. For those worried about access to medical care, including women around the world. For our planet and the ongoing climate crisis, we pray for effective and creative action. May all who are moved to action in these times be clear and strong and compassionate in our response. We also hold all those tender personal concerns which are close to our hearts this day. We have two joys to share. The first is that Spencer Ross will be 98 on April 4th, so congratulations and happy birthday, Spencer. And Tim and Jeannie Schmitz announced that Clara Marie Pelletier was born at 12:55 a.m. today to daughter Catherine Marie. Baby Claire is 7 pounds, 11 ounces, and 20 inches. And Jeannie says, we are all thrilled. My beautiful parents would be too. It's such a fitting circle of life moment as we hold her great-grandparents, Mary Jane Walkinger, and her great-grandmother, Mary Jane Walkinger, in our hearts today. And Bob, too. I invite those of you who are here in the sanctuary to say aloud the names you would like to lift up in the care of this community, and I will repeat them so those at home can hear. Mary, Chelsea, Mark, Becky, Patricia, Len, I'm sorry, Neil, Ruthann, Tom. I now invite those of you on Zoom to enter the names of those you would like to lift up, and I will read them. Congratulations, Jean Marie and Timmy. Another congratulations for those who have been lost to me. Ellen, Genevieve, Carol and Richard, Raj, Rose, Laura, may they be well, may they feel the love that surrounds them. Let us take a moment to give thanks for the blessings emerging even now, for women and girls who are leading us forward and showing us what peaceful empowerment looks like. We give thanks. For journalists and scientists, attorneys and public servants, and so many others who are offering truth and wisdom in a time of need. We give thanks. For ordinary people, including you and me, who are rising to the occasion and bringing the best that is in us as best we can, we give thanks. We close with a few more breaths in silence. May it be so. Amen. Our split plate charity for this month is UUSC Emergency Relief Fund for Ukraine Response. UUSC is a human rights organization with more than 80 years of work in solidarity with people who have experienced displacement. We know that a further escalation of war in Ukraine will only worsen the global refugee crisis, in which more than 80 million people worldwide have already been displaced from their homes. Ukraine is currently home to more than 1 million asylum seekers and internally displaced people, many of whom could now be forced to flee for a second time as a result of Putin's incursion. You can send a check to the office or donate through the website as seen on your screen. You can also donate through the Give Plus Church app, which can be found on the App Store or Google Play. And I think for those of you who are here, there's a basket in the back when you leave. Thank you.
So it's so good to be here this morning. It's good to be here with all of you. It's good to be here next to Bruce Marshall. It's good to be watching you in the main hall. My mind is filled with the images of the main hall, not just everybody who's in there now, but those who aren't there, who've passed on or who are moved on to other places. Since I'm not there and it's just virtual, I can picture the main hall filled with all that Sunday energy we all love, and with the faces of so many who have mattered to us. So I want to say how wonderful it was to hear Bruce's words and his warmth and his humor. For those of you who weren't here during Bruce's ministry, if you're thinking, gosh darn it, I came too late. Those were the good old days of the fellowship. They were the good old days, but they weren't the only good old days. So please don't think you missed the boat. For this congregation has always been about the notion of giving one's heart to this endeavor now, believing that connecting matters greatly right now in this moment of time, this process, as Bruce put it, while paving the way for others to do the same. Here's how author Annie Dillard describes this tension between now and then, and I've always loved this image she offers. She says, we ask ourselves, are not our generations the crucial ones? No, we are not. These times of ours are ordinary times, a slice of life like any other. There was no formerly heroic time, and there was no formerly pure generation. The absolute, she says, the absolute is available to everyone in every age. There never was a more holy age than ours, and there was never a less holy one than right now. One thing I've always appreciated, I did always appreciate about my life with you, was as much as you loved Bruce and his ministry, and all those who didn't know Bruce, you heard that warmth and humor. You can see why he was so loved. As much as you loved him, you made room for me when it was my time, when it was our time. There was no formerly crucial time, says Annie Dillard, because it's all crucial. When I began my ministry with you, I entered a story that others had been shaping. In fact, 47 years worth of others. And now you're 75 years old. You realize that the sum total of Bruce's and my time here only amounts to 20 years. That's not even a quarter of your story. So it's a given that our memories that we're sharing today are simply a handful of the puzzle pieces that make this community who you are. It probably doesn't surprise you that many of the same women that Bruce had in his mind and mentioned from his ministry, many of those same women shaped the decade I lived alongside all of you from 1994 to 2003. I'm thinking about so many of those women that they were my elders, they were my matriarchs. But I'm also thinking about my peers, that next generation of women who stepped into leadership roles in the 1990s and the 2000s. These congregants and friends have been important role models for and companions to so many of us. But my strongest thoughts today aren't about those women. And my strongest thoughts right now move down to the next generation, to the countless girls who grew up in the environment these adults shaped and passed down. I'm thinking about the girls who absorbed those passwords, as Saint-Exupéry puts it, those passwords that are transmitted from generation to generation. I'm thinking about how grateful I am that this heritage of mind and heart, as our chalice word said, that this isn't just offered down in one direction from elder to youngster. Inspiration can also be handed back up from children to the adults who surround them. Here's what I mean. I'm thinking today about the little girl, the first baby I dedicated here, and how from the sidelines I watched her grow from a quiet child into a confident 10-year-old who wowed us all one Sunday with a skit she performed up on stage with speaking parts for a morning service. She is now a successful professional working in an educational setting, dealing with people of all ages. And she is no doubt helping her charges, her students, her public find their chance to wow others. I'm thinking about the preschooler who is dealing with that blend of nerves and excitement that can so easily happen to kids during the holidays, and how on one Christmas Eve, she greeted me with a big smile and then threw up on my high heels in between the two services. She impressed me from that day on. That girl grew into an amazing athlete and became a coach and role model for girls and young women, finding grace under pressure as they seek their own inner power and bodily strength. I'm thinking about several different youngsters who face significant health and medical issues too early in life. Each of them made their way through those scares with their parents and with this community of love and support surrounding them. Each of these girls persisted, as our story today put it. Each was strong, resilient, and inspirational to the rest of us back then. And today they each live life as a competent, caring, creative woman who knows that fear need not win the day. I'm thinking about a shiny-eyed elementary age girl who showed up here with her family after the tragedy of 9/11, all of them seeking some sense of community and comfort. The hope and enthusiasm I saw in that child's face then, amidst the fears and losses, seizing the minds and hearts of all of us adults, that glowing energy still emanates from this recent college graduate who's just beginning her work life in a world still in need of so much comfort and care. I'm thinking about the dozen tweens who 25 years ago, alongside their mothers, met with me and two beloved congregants, educator Mary Bly and social worker Judy Reinauer, in a course called Side by Side. The brainchild of Mary, we three collaborated on its design and implementation. The goal of the intergenerational curriculum was to explore various aspects of who we are as females, to encourage these girls to define female beauty, strength, and value on their own terms, and to help each other discover, use, and hear our own distinct voices. And Bruce, it won't surprise you that we were able to publish this curriculum because of those same women who published your book. Most of those then not yet middle schoolers are moms now, passing on to their children, I hope, the importance of their own unique gifts to the world. And finally, I'm thinking about the girl whom I watched become a big sister. And then I saw her fall in love with ballet dancing and reading and learning and so much more. And this morning I watched her, a grown woman, and now a religious professional and beloved staff person in this faith community. I watched her, we watched her, and many of her young students light the chalice. So I'm thinking about Danielle Burby and all the other girls I've mentioned all of whom are real people. I didn't just make these amalgamations up to illustrate a good sermon point. They are real people, and I'm sure their parents know that I've just mentioned their daughters. But I lift up these younger sisters because even as children, they reflected back to us that valuing them mattered. And thinking of them because they could not have become who they have without the culture, the personality of this fellowship of honoring each person's inherent value and worthiness, regardless of gender. You can't be it if you can't see it, our stories said. This service is a celebration of what we have always seen here. Strong women matter. In this religious home, the 7.5 decades of girls raised here, they have all been blessed by the sages who came before them, whether they knew them or not. And I have no doubt this will be true into the next chapters of your story. The children here and the elders, the parents and the childless, the singles and the widowed, the ministers, the congregants, the staff, all of us have the chance to be doing some handing down and taking up the heritage of mind and heart. All of us have the chance to be envoys of some sort for each other as we weave ourselves into our shared journey. So I close with this image, an image that's not mine. It came to me from a rabbi friend, but I think it fits for today. He describes our congregational lives as us all being a mishmash of messengers, each holding small pieces of the whole. He says, each lifetime is a piece of a jigsaw puzzle. For some, there are more pieces. For others, the puzzle is more difficult to assemble. And so it goes, souls going this way and that, trying to assemble the myriad parts. But know this, no one has within themselves, all the pieces of their puzzle. Everyone carries with them at least one and probably many pieces to someone else's puzzle. And when you present your piece, which might seem worthless to you, to another, whether you know it or not, whether they know it or not, you are one of creation's messengers. Let's hear about some more of the messengers of this fellowship.
Oh, Beth, thank you. Thank you for those memories. I don't want to follow Beth. As we near our 75th anniversary as a congregation this December, which you'll be hearing more about in the coming months, it has been particularly poignant this morning to think about and honor our female leaders. There may be names you've never heard of or didn't realize had left a legacy. They're women we don't want to forget, and if you want to learn more about them, we're all happy to share. Who they are is very evident in the 7 videos you are about to watch. You'll hear some of our current female leaders speaking about the role models they had, a clear example of the tradition of mentorship we have here at UUFH. Through their the women they're going to mention were my inspirations as well, and through their gentle guidance and enthusiastic advocacy for us all taking on more responsibilities here, were also taking care of this fellowship. They wanted to ensure that this congregation they have cared so much about was in good hands. So when they took notice of me and mentored me, I was honored that they entrusted me to even attempt to carry on their work. In every leadership position and decision I make here, I take their legacy into account because I've been given the gift of their faith. I also try to keep in mind their generosity as role models, mindful of the next generation of leaders to guide, either by example or directly. They've also inspired me beyond these walls. In a plug for taking on leadership roles here, I can affirm that the skills they taught me in the boardroom in this building, I took into the corporate boardroom, into starting my own business, and into my classrooms. I never expected when I was a 22-year-old new person here, not yet sure what I needed, that I would gain so many rewards. People like Ginny Kushnick, Margaret Titus, Liz Kane, Johanna Van Roy, and Dot Muller let me know that my presence mattered. Early on, Sally Miller, with whom I shared a profession, took me under her wing to get me involved in communications here. Working with her was fun, but she was also a role model of unconditional love for a child as she watched her son Terry Miller struggle with AIDS. She was a tenacious leader in the fight for gay rights in PFLAG, supporting other parents of gay children in a time when people were still afraid they could catch AIDS. She marched every year in the Gay Pride Parade, even when her health was failing, showing us all what conviction looks like. You're about to hear about the other women who have made it a point to reach across generations to guide the next one. They are also role models for aging, for demonstrating that the work of this congregation truly belongs to us all, regardless of age, which is why, as Susan Peters masterfully manages all manner of repairs around here, and Ann Skolnick keeps our office humming, they may not realize they're coaching others by doing so. So I will tell them now that many of us say they're who we want to be one day. One of the last gifts that Lois Ann Cepez gave me was an invitation to join her, Mary Jane Walkinger, and Carol Town in our fellowship archives. One of the surest signs I had reached middle age, but also that I had earned their trust to take over the care of the history of this congregation. It is my great honor that I, along with my contemporary Nikki Willard, get to be an archive trainee with Carol's guidance. Anytime I've been invited to serve on a committee with Carol Town, I always say yes, because not only is she a woman who has provided me with leadership support, she is also someone I'm grateful to call one of my UU moms, because that's the unique gift that these women have passed on to us. They've embraced us, nurtured our skills, and then let us go to take over their work so that they can hopefully rest assured that they've put the fellowship in good hands. I know I'm not the only woman who never wants to let them down, but I will let them speak for themselves. And I also want to give a quick thank you to Jim Monnier for putting together the videos you're about to see.
Hi, 3 women inspired me to know that I had something to offer the fellowship when I first came. The first was Maddie Beatty, who showed me how pastoral care could work. Then Evelyn Krell showed me that a single working woman could be the president of the fellowship, could start the personnel committee, could lead a caregivers group. And then finally, Mary Jane Walkinger was my role model on how to do everything.
Helen Boxwell. I had the pleasure of knowing Helen as a Huntington school teacher and administrator, and as a member of our fellowship. What I learned from Helen is that you can put kindness into action every single day, and that one person can truly make a difference. We'd witnessed the collection of local books on Long Island into a library system for the town of 150 people in Ethiopia, not to mention the building of classrooms, the bringing of water to a compound, the training of teachers, and the creating of a syllabus and student books. Love Helen Boxwell. Sue McGovern. I learned from Sue McGovern that it's the people who make up the community of the fellowship, that you can be behind the scenes, providing wisdom, guidance, care, every day connection, being an important part of our infrastructure, quietly, lovingly, and powerfully. I love Sue McGovern. Beth Graham. I learned from Beth Graham the importance of being non-judgmental and welcoming, how vulnerability with a strong dose of positivity builds human and divine connections. When Beth was leaving our congregation, I wrote in my final message to her, "My only regret is that I was unable to work more closely with you during her time at the fellowship. I was still raising small children and working." I later was able to serve on the UUFH board, and it was because she had shown me years earlier that it was possible.
Yeah, well, there are many, many women at the fellowship that inspired me throughout the years. So I'll mention my earliest mentors, Ginny Kushnick, Lois Ann Cepez, and Mary Jane Walkinger. When I first came to the fellowship and started to wonder what it was all about, it was Ginny Kushnick, then the vice president, who kind of showed me around. And she had such a gentle, calm manner, and ended up saying, you know, when you're ready, you'll get involved. Later, Lois Ann Cepez mentored me on the Castle Care Committee and convinced me to co-chair it. I really didn't think I could do it, but she helped me to understand that, in fact, I really could do it, and I did it. And it was just a lucky coincidence that, indeed, that I was part of the ministerial search committee that included both Ginny and Lois Ann, and, of course, Mary Jane Walkinger, the search committee that brought Reverend Beth Graham to the UUFH.
I love talking about the people in the fellowship, the women in this fellowship who have inspired me. I'd like to mention 4 of them. First is Joan Cayley, who I served with as board president. I admired her quiet, inclusive leadership, and I love her creativity, especially when she's coming up with ideas for services auction parties. Second on the list would be Joan McQuaid, who in her own way was a constant reminder to always question why. She was a wonderful soup maker, and she made everyone laugh at her quirkiness, but she really was a gem. Liz Kane, who everybody who knows Liz Kane would admire her for her wisdom, her brilliance, her quiet fortitude, her ability to be a wonderful friend. And the 4th person is Allison Barish, who I have known and love for her. I've known her for a decade or more, and I love her for her paying it forward to all of the youth of the Unitarian fellowships and congregations all over Long Island in the work that she does for the Sophia Falls camp.
Okay, I came to the fellowship in the 1970s along with Ruth Lyon and Jenny Kushnick. Ruth Lyon, at the time that we closed Bethpage, was very influential in persuading the UUA to let us use the money from the sale of the Bethpage Fellowship to start our endowment. So that is how our endowment fund got started. Other people who were very influential at the time, Nina Phillips was president, Jimmy Jamer was very active, Ruth Auerbach was very prominent here, and Maddie Beatty, who had her finger in almost everything. Later on, my contemporaries, besides Ruth, were Lois Ann Cepez, Mary Jane Walkinger, and Dot Muller. And Dot, everybody had nothing but love for, because she was the connections. She took people who walked in the door and connected them to the fellowship. And Ginny was very active. She was president, and she was very involved in the Beacon, which was our newsletter at the time, and any type of communication. She was very involved in that. And We still have Alice Link with us at 101, and she, again, has been very dear to the fellowship, and I sort of want to follow in her footsteps and be as admired as she has been.
Since I've been here, it's been clear that women are movers and shakers at UUFH. Women who were always busy, keeping things running, from the kitchen to the boiler room to the boardroom. It was something you noticed. I'll talk about a few who influenced me. I met Carol Town at my first Renaissance fair. I was clueless and awkward in my Victorian dress. She smiled and put me to work. I can't remember the work, but I remember the smile. I didn't know then I would encounter her fingerprints all over the fellowship. Not only Queen of the Fair, but our first DRE, our keeper of our archived history, our convener of our Committee on Ministry, and lay leader of our Touchstone small group ministry, to name a few. Her dedication amazes me. Attending one of my first congregational meetings, I recall then President Sue McGovern, dressed in beautiful drapey colors, sitting up on a stool, coolly presiding. I was in awe and then terror, as I thought, one day they might ask me to do that. Sue wears multiple hats, simultaneously co-chairing committees like pastoral care, stewardship, connections, services auction. She is a gatherer of people willing to join, led by her generous example. Sue has been a true mentor to me. I had no intention of joining the first board I was asked to be on, until Beth Graham said, "You would be great representing families at our board meeting." How could I say no to Beth? I learned deeply from the leaders of the day, Sue McGovern, Annabelle Kaner, Nikki Willard. When I was asked to co-lead our small ministry program, Meeting Point, I thought, nah, I'll just participate. But Ann Rattinger reached out and said, "Come on, Terry, we'll do this together." And we did. And so I learned and grew alongside the strong women leaders of this community. It seemed only right when the time came and I was asked to serve as vice president and then president, to say yes, to stand up on the shoulders of those and other great women here at UUFH who have inspired me. And so goes our tradition. Who is watching and learning now, willing to say yes when her time comes?
When I was asked to participate in this service, a few names came to me right away. But then as I was thinking about it, I came up with 35 plus names. They were all phenomenal women in this fellowship. And I was thinking about what is it that they all have in common, and and things that have inspired me because they have this in common, and their leadership skills. All of them did a lot of encouraging, and they taught me how to think out of the box and to perform out of the box. And as you can see, this is not my forte. And so I'm very nervous. So I am out of my comfort zone. And this is one of the things that they all have encouraged me to do and inspired me to do. That's it.
So, with our minds and hearts filled with all of these messengers and more, as Lisa extinguishes our chalice, we know that we carry its flame of memory and hope with us. And let's also carry these words. Go out into the world now in peace, have courage, hold on to what is good. Return to no person evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted, support the weak, help the suffering, honor all beings again and again and again. Amen.
So please stay around. We're going to, I think Bruce and Beth are staying. We're going to just be patient with us while we transfer everything over. And anyone at home, you can unmute yourself. Just stay for a moment and say hello.
So those of us here in the hall and those of us at home can hear this now. So we're going to take a shot. We've never tried to do a Zoom fellowship hour after the service, so we're going to see how it goes. But I thought the very least we could do, for those who are able, if we could stand up. And Jim, if you mind getting on the camera, and we're going to, if we can get everybody to stand up and face the camera, then we can all at least wave to Beth and Bruce. They can see us. So, and maybe we, there we are. They're all up on the screen. Bruce and Beth there. So can you see us, guys?
No.
The camera, for those of you in the hall, the camera is at the top, right above the exit sign. So wave there. We should be able to see us on the main screen. There it is, see? Upper left is us there. So it's a little awkward here. It's not a conference center. We can't do, you got to turn your back to one or the other. So thank you so much, Bruce and Beth. That was terrific. I think, Debbie, can we get that Zoom on the speaker now? Good job. Beth, can you say something so we can hear, make sure that the folks are hearing us? You can unmute yourselves now.
I'm good talking. Hey, everybody. And Bruce, it was so good to hear you.
Oh, thank you. And it was good to, I appreciate your bringing the women's history into the present and into the future. That's the right emphasis. Thank you.
And I saw that Katie was in the Zoom sphere somewhere. Is Katie's tree out? Ask Jim if Katie's tree is out there in the courtyard. Let's ask if the tree's out there.
Is the tree up in the courtyard still? I don't know.
Katie's tree?
Well, yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yep.
Okay.
I think the best thing to do now, given all the noise in the hall here, is we're going to shut down in here, but then you can continue on Zoom if anybody wants to chat there. It's much easier to chat remotely than it is from in here. Okay? All right, Debbie, come here. First of all, if I could have your attention, here's the champion. Debbie's the one that ran the board today. He was able to figure it all out, so thank you. Well, wave there, let's see that. There's the camera there. See, we're not sure. All right, so if we can, I think we can shut ourselves off here now, Deb, and then the Zoom can stay on, right? So you need to make somebody a co-host, I think. That's all out there.
Left out a card from Terry Donaldson. Did you
All
get
right,
it?
so thank you for bearing with us. I see Carol in Franktown. Hi, how you doing, guys? Good to see you. Hey, Joan Cayley, how are you? And Francis Roth joining us from Massachusetts. Yeah. Yep, that's great.
Kathy Zillman.
Here we go. All right.
Wish I could get it up.